Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're dialing it back to 2011, a pretty wild year in the digital underground, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Things were definitely simmering. You had all that energy post-WikiLeaks. And right in the middle of it, this group pops up, Lulzsec.
Okay.
Like your typical cyber criminals,
Yeah.
you know. These guys were different. They really shook things up, basically told the suits their security was a joke.
Total joke.
Yeah.
It was like pure digital resistance, plain and simple.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what we're digging into today, isn't it? Lulzsec's whole mission, their real impact. Because, it's fascinating how in just, 50 days?
50 days of Lulz, yeah.
In that short, chaotic run, they really push back.
Yeah.
Push back against the surveillance state creeping in, corporate negligence, all that.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive is to get past the headlines, Go into the terminal logs, the IRC back channels, show you exactly how they rolled.
So who they were?
Who they were, what they did, and why, honestly, their story is a huge cautionary tale. Especially if you're trusting your data to, the establishment.
Couldn't agree more. So yeah, this deep dive, it's all about those infamous 50 days of Lulzsec. We're going to cover their targets, their techniques, and we'll be speaking our native tongue here, Linux.
Naturally.
And we'll definitely get into the betrayal, the infamous betrayal that brought it all crashing down.
Yeah.
All right, so setting the scene. 2011, Operation Payback had happened. Anonymous was, everywhere, right?
A hydra, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Chaotic, everyone claiming the mask.
Yeah.
But inside that, you had some serious talent. Guys who actually knew their bash from their,
The ones with actual skills.
And they were getting frustrated. They wanted more focus, more impact than just launching another DDoS.
Yeah, exactly. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, Lulzsec kind of boiled out of that frustration, out of that crucible. They were a tighter unit. They apparently formed out of this collective called Internet Feds, and you had the key players emerging, like Hector Monsegur, Sabu.
Yeah, the name everyone knows.
And Jake Davis, Topiary, he was often the voice.
Mouthpiece, yeah.
And Ryan Ackroyd, Kayla, known for the tech side. So was this just a splinter group, or was it like an upgrade, an evolution designed to be way more agile, more punchy?
That's the question, isn't it? Seemed like it.
Definitely felt like it. They were, 6 or 7 core members? You had T-Flow, Avoni, Poonsauce, Palladium.
All coordinating on IRC.
Right. Classic IRC channels,
Right.
Which, that's how things got done back then. Fast, real-time decisions. Very different from the big, sometimes clumsy, anonymous actions.
Allow them to be precise, surgical almost.
Yeah, and that precision, that's what got everyone's attention. Speed and precision.
So their whole philosophy summed up as for the lulz, right? For the laughs.
Yeah, that's what people latched onto.
But you got to look deeper. It wasn't just grins and giggles, as they put it. This was about exposing hypocrisy, showing the emperor had no clothes, especially when it came to security theater.
Exactly. That term, security theater, nails it. Just a show of security, no substance.
And their motto.
Yeah.
Laughing at your security since 2011. Bold, simple, direct. No messing around.
And their manifesto, it laid it out pretty clearly. We screw each other over for a jolt of satisfaction. They weren't chasing money.
Nope. No profit motive.
It was about the mayhem, the chaos, and dragging these fundamental weaknesses out into the light. They even went after so-called corrupted white hats.
Yeah, criticizing the private patching approach.
Right, which totally aligns with that core hacker ethos. Security through obscurity is bullshit. Exposure forces improvement. Gotta drag the flaws into the open.
Absolutely. Can't fix what you pretend isn't broken.
And you saw that in how they release stuff. The ASCII
Her Lulz boat. Clap.
Yeah. That often came with the data dumps. And they weren't shy about saying they enjoyed watching the fallout. Called it priceless.
But they always pushed back on responsibility for misuse, didn't they?
Always. They put the blame squarely on users reusing crap passwords and, more importantly, on the companies with pathetic security.
Their logic was, if your system's wide open, it's your fault when someone walks in, not the person who pointed it out.
Exactly. If you leave the door unlocked, don't blame the guy who finds it open. Blame yourself for not locking it.
Okay, let's talk targets. Their first really big public splash.
Right.
Fox.com.
Right.
Hit them with a classic SQL injection. I mean, basic stuff. You run SQLmap-U, https.fox.com, vulnerable-path.id1 Anyone running basic checks should find that.
Should, yeah. But apparently too complex for Fox's corporate security at the time?
Seems like it. They used it to grab, what was it, 73,000 details for X Factor contestants?
Yeah, 73,000. And then they didn't just take the data, they defaced Fox's LinkedIn. Their Twitter, too, made a deal mess.
It wasn't just technical skill, was it? It was psychological, too.
Totally. They didn't just hack. They released the data with detailed explanations of the vulnerabilities, basically gave Fox a free, very public, very humiliating security audit.
Which brings up the motivation question again. Was it purely for the lulz, or was it like digital civil disobedience?
Could be both, right? Maybe hitting Fox was also about their news coverage, like how they went after the rapper Common, calling him vile.
Yeah, could definitely be a jab at perceived biases, pointing out technical flaws and taking a shot at the content.
It showed they could use tech skill to disrupt narratives, force accountability for security, and maybe for media stuff, too.
Okay, so after Fox, Sony. This is where it got really interesting.
Oh, Sony? Yeah, they just kept hitting Sony, Sony Pictures, Sony BMG, Sony Music.
One after another. And the big reveal, plaintext passwords.
Ugh. Plaintext. Over 1 million of them, supposedly.
1 million customer passwords just sitting there, unencrypted, readable. Sony literally asked for it. Storing credentials like that, it's amateur hour.
It really is. And that's the thing, isn't it? Why was this multi-billion-dollar corporation making such basic rookie mistakes? It beggars belief.
Lulzsec was pretty clear about why they went after Sony, though.
Yeah, they explicitly mentioned Sony suing George Holt's GeoHote for jailbreaking the PS3. That was the trigger, they said.
And crucially, they didn't sell the data. They leaked it.
Right. Which fits their whole MO. It wasn't about profit, it was about exposure. The idea being, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that this kind of public shaming forces companies to clean up their act.
Forces them to fix their bad security practices.
Exactly. They basically said it themselves, didn't they? Something like.
Yeah, the quote was, "Every bit of data we took wasn't encrypted. Sony stored over 1,000 passwords of its customers in plaintext, which means it's just a matter of taking it. This is disgraceful and insecure. They were asking for it."
Asking for it. Pretty blunt. And it highlights that massive failure in how Sony handled user data.
Okay, then there was PBS, the public broadcasting service. Remember the Tupac hoax?
Huh. Yeah, classic Lulzsec, claiming Tupac and Biggie were alive in New Zealand.
They hit PBS right after that Ricky Secrets documentary aired.
Yeah.
They felt it was unfair to Assange and Chelsea Manning.
So again, a political angle.
Definitely. The point wasn't just the laugh, though that was part of it. It was a direct jab at the mainstream media narrative around WikiLeaks.
And they didn't stop at the fake story.
No way. Get this. They claimed they dropped internal PBS server passwords too. Think about that. It's like finding etceterapass wide open or doing an Elzlive R2 and seeing everything right there on a public media outlet system, publicly available.
That's a huge compromise. If we connect this back, this was pure hacktivism as resistance. It just showed how easily narratives can be messed with when basic security is ignored.
How'd they get in? CMS exploited.
Reportedly, yeah. Exploited their content management system. Just underlines that whole point, doesn't it? The real threat isn't necessarily hacktivists exposing incompetence. Maybe it's the government surveillance apparatus, the surveillance capitalism they were fighting back against.
Good point. Okay, so they hit big media tech giants. But they didn't stop there, did they?
Not at all. They went after porn sites.
Like prawn.com, yeah.
Gaming platforms, too. Bethesda got hit hard.
Right. They leaked like 200,000 accounts for games like Brink and Fallout, New Vegas.
Nintendo, Minecraft, League of Legends, EVE Online, Heroes of New Earth. The list goes on.
Again, mostly not because of some crazy zero-day exploit.
Nope. Basic hygiene failures. SQL injection, remote file inclusion, RFI, cross-site scripting, XSS. The usual suspects. Stuff that should have been patched.
They dropped, what, 26,000 emails and passwords from prawn.com.
Yeah, and get this, some of those belong to U.S. Army personnel. Just shows how widespread the lack of basic security was.
So why? Why were so many places, big and small, vulnerable to these pretty elementary methods?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Part of it might have been the tools they had. Kayla's botnet, remember? Supposedly 800,000 infected servers.
An 800K botnet. Yeah, that'll give you some firepower for RFI or DDoS.
Exactly. Could crush most unhardened systems easily. But fundamentally, it highlights that security isn't about being untouchable. It's about making yourself a harder target than the next guy.
And if you're running unpatched SQL,
you deserve what's coming. Honestly. Any sysadmin doing that back then, or even now, you're just asking for trouble.
All right, so after hitting corporations left and right, they turned their sights towards government. InfraGard.
Ah, yes, InfraGard. the FBI's public-private pals.
Talk about hitting where it hurts, symbolically anyway. They dumped usernames, passwords, emails, 180 from the Atlanta chapter first.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
And hundreds more from Connecticut. All the juicy bits, supposedly.
And you'd think an FBI-affiliated group would at least, hash their credentials properly.
You would think, but nope. Reports said plaintext again, or maybe weakly hashed. Just sloppy.
And their comment, "Let it flow, you stupid FBI battleships."
Subtle. Really tells you how they felt about it.
So kidding. Tell how you really feel, guys.
But what's fascinating here, right, is the implication. This isn't just embarrassing some private company. This is exposing vulnerabilities right next door to government operations.
Directly challenging the Fed's security posture.
Exactly. It's a clear example of hacktivism as resistance. Challenging the whole idea of national security when the basic cyber hygiene are just ignored.
Then they went even bigger. U.S. Senate.
Access to public-facing server, apparently, and published admin usernames and passwords.
Ouch. And then the CIA's public site.
Yep. tangodownhide.gov for the lulz. That was the tweet, wasn't it?
Pretty much. And again, not some super complex kernel exploit we're talking about.
No, just a simple packet flood is what they said. Or a well-aimed DDoS, probably using that botnet again.
But the message,
yeah,
crystal clear. Nobody is safe if their perimeter is weak. Doesn't matter who you are. Bad dash lash taxes, weak such config, you're vulnerable.
And it raises that question, doesn't it? Governments are quick to call cyber attacks an act of war, but then their own public-facing sites get knocked over by a simple packet flood. What does that actually say about their capabilities versus their rhetoric?
It says security through obscurity is bullshit.
Exactly. Lulzsec proved it time and time again. They even set up that phone hotline, remember? Taking suggestions for targets.
Huh. Yeah, and launched phone DDoS attacks, too. Hit the FBI's Detroit office, among others, just causing chaos on multiple fronts.
Multi-channel disruption. Keeping the pressure on.
Then came Operation Anti-Security. Lulzsec teamed up with Anonymous for this one.
Right, a call for basically pure digital civil disobedience.
The message was, steal and publish anything classified or sensitive you can find. Not for money, but because information wants to be free.
That core principle again.
During that op, they hit the UK's Serious Organized Crime Agency as SOE, and Brazilian government sites too, expanding their reach.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the Chingala Migra leak. That was against the Arizona Department of Public Safety.
Right, protesting Arizona's immigration laws, SB 1070.
Exactly. A clear political statement using hacked data. It wasn't just random chaos. There were often specific political points being made.
And their final drop, before they supposedly disbanded, that was massive.
Huge. Just an enormous dump of data. Internal AT&T docs, IBM phone data, NATO bookshop accounts.
And user credentials. Tons of them. 750,000 username password combos from places like hackforums.net, Battlefield Heroes.
Just showed the sheer volume of unsecured data floating around out there ripe for the picking, including stuff marked sensitive or for official use only.
It really drove home how much data was just not protected properly. Systemic failure.
Definitely aimed to show it was systemic, yeah. Not just isolated screw-ups.
Okay, now, the part of the story that still gets people fired up, the betrayal. Sabu. Hector Monsegur. The hacker demigod, as some called him.
Yeah. This is where it gets messy and kind of sad, honestly.
He slipped up a basic OPSEC lead, Operational Security 101.
Apparently so. Logged into an IRC channel without hiding his IP properly, didn't tunnel through Tor, didn't use a proxy.
You know the drill. Yeah. Always be routing through Tor. Stirhash bash d 9050 user at proxy. Configure your tools. That's lesson 1 in etc. bash.bash share e for anyone doing this stuff.
Absolutely fundamental. But he missed it, and that's all it took.
Who nailed him? Rival hackers.
Yeah, reports say groups like Security found an old IRC chat log where he'd accidentally posted a link back to his personal website or something. Game over.
Just goes to show, it doesn't matter how big your rep is, one slip on basic OPSEC.
And you're done. It's a constant vigilance thing.
So the FBI picks him up, June 7th, 2011.
Right, and what's fascinating, or maybe disturbing, is the approach the FBI reportedly took. They didn't just arrest him.
They flipped him.
They flipped him hard. Apparently using his personal situation against him, he was the guardian, the foster parent for his 2 young nieces.
Use that as leverage.
Reports suggest classic good cop, bad cop tactics. Yeah. Heavy pressure, which, it raises that really difficult question. At what point does law enforcement, by using someone's vulnerabilities like that, cross a line? especially when they then make that person complicit in ongoing activities, directing them as an informant. It gets ethically very murky.
Very. And Sabu, under their direction, he became the model informant, didn't he?
That's how it was framed, yeah. He wasn't just snitching on his old crew, he was actively helping the feds.
Helping them patch vulnerabilities.
And supposedly prevented over 300 cyber attacks. That was the official line. Attacks on NASA, the U.S. military, even a water utility.
Which, okay, preventing an attack on a water utility sounds good on the surface. But from another perspective.
From the underground perspective, he wasn't defending the innocent. He was defending the systems. The very systems that enable surveillance, capitalism, state control, the things Lulzsec was supposedly fighting against.
He switched sides completely, became part of the infrastructure he once targeted.
And the plea deal the FBI gave him.
Oh, wow.
That really tells a story about their priorities.
What they let him off for, it was a lot, wasn't it?
A lot. Drug dealing, having an illegal handgun, buying stolen property, identity theft, apparently charged like $15,000 to his old boss's credit card. Real-world crimes.
Stuff that normally gets you serious time.
Exactly. But they reportedly let most of that slide because his cooperation, his betrayal of the hacker community, was more valuable to them. He could give them technical detail, how to get root, how to escalate privileges.
So his betrayal was worth more to the feds than prosecuting him for those other crimes.
That's what it looks like. And for the community he came from, his betrayal was the real crime, not what Lulzsec did.
How did the community react? Predictably, I guess.
Yeah. Immediately branded a snitch, a total outcast. Anonymous was loud about it, calling for Jeremy Hammond's release.
Hammond, right. He was caught partly because of Sabu's cooperation, wasn't he?
Reportedly, yes.
Huh.
And Hammond, unlike Sabu, refused to cooperate. He stood his ground.
And got a decade in prison for it.
10 years. While Sabu walked relatively free after some time served, it starkly shows the two paths, doesn't it? Resistance versus selling out.
Huge difference in consequences.
And it leaves that question hanging, right? Can a hacker demigod really wash away the betrayal by becoming a legit white hat pen tester afterward?
Working for the man.
Yeah. Does that cleanse him? Or does it just confirm he capitulated? For many, it's the latter. It just proved he'd given in.
Like Anonymous said, though. The Hydra.
Exactly. Hashtag Anonymous is a Hydra. Cut off one head and we grow two back. Sabu might have helped stop Lulzsec, but the idea, the resistance, that didn't die.
So, looking back, what's the legacy? Lulzsec's run was short, chaotic, yeah. But it was also a wake-up call, wasn't it? A painful public lesson for sysadmins everywhere.
Absolutely. A very loud wake-up call.
They basically screamed to the world that patching old known vulnerabilities, stuff like SQL injection, isn't optional. It's baseline critical.
Mandatory. Table stakes.
Which is why we preach using tools like Kali Linux, backtrack back then, for your own pen testing. Audit your own defenses constantly. Don't wait for a Lulzsec to do it for you very publicly.
Exactly. Proactive defense. Because Lulzsec's actions, though unwelcome by the targets, were a real-world demo of what happens when you don't do the basics.
And the techniques they used.
Yeah.
It's insightful, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it really is. Safecal, RFI, XSS, directory traversal. These weren't groundbreaking 0 days.
Nope. Stuff that was known,
Yeah.
well documented.
They just exploited the low-hanging fruit, the glaring weaknesses that companies, for whatever reason, laziness, cost-cutting, ignorance, chose to ignore.
Which hammers home that point. Any sysadmin running unpatched SQL or leaving gaping holes like that.
Deserves what's coming, seriously. And the plaintext password thing, that
Right.
was maybe the most damning exposure. Companies storing data like amateurs, that just
Yeah.
screamed negligence.
It forced a conversation, at least. Made people realize how bad things were behind the corporate firewall.
A very necessary, if uncomfortable, conversation.
Now, if you compare Lulzsec to what we see today, like modern ransomware crews, it's a different world.
Oh, a completely different beast. These ransomware groups, they're practically corporations themselves. HR departments, 6-figure signing bonuses. It's organized crime on a massive scale.
Right. Lulzsec, for all the mayhem, they had some lines, it seemed. They didn't hit hospitals for cash, you know.
Generally, yeah. There was often a political point, or it was about exposing security flaws, not just pure extortion of critical services. It felt different.
The real criminals today, arguably, wear suits, not hoodies. Or maybe they wear both. They're the ones paying six figures to the ransomware devs to make you pay a ransom.
It's a fair point. In Lulzsec's story, connecting it back, it reinforces that other narrative too, that maybe state surveillance and corporate data exploitation are the bigger, more insidious threats.
Compared to hacktivists poking holes in negligent companies.
Right. While law enforcement calls it cybercrime, and technically intrusions are illegal from another perspective, it's digital resistance. Lulzsec wanted to show how fragile things were.
Arguing that exposure forces improvement. Better than hiding flaws, security through obscurity.
Exactly. In that frame, the real crime was trusting corporations with our data in the first place, especially when they proved so careless with it. The negligence was the first failure.
So, wrapping this up, what's the takeaway for you listening? What does this Lulzsec saga mean now?
I think it means stay curious, keep digging, don't take things at face value.
Remember the hacker ethic. Information wants to be free. Check out forums 2600, go to DEFACON or CCC if you can. Learn your tools, understand sudo misconfigs, look under the hood.
Understand how systems actually work, explore beyond the surface. Because the lesson from Lulzsec holds true. If corporations or governments are too lazy or incompetent to secure data properly,
someone's going to find out. Someone's going to release it. If it's left unprotected, it won't stay private forever. The onus is on them to lock it down.
Absolutely. And that leaves us with that final big question, doesn't it? If these vulnerabilities keep getting exposed again and again by people challenging the system, and the main response is still just punishment, crackdowns, rather than fixing the underlying problems, making security truly robust and transparent, who really benefits from keeping things hidden? Who benefits from information control?
Something to think about.
Definitely. What's the true cost of security when exposing flaws, when digital civil disobedience feels like the only way left to fight back against unchecked surveillance and data hoarding? Keep asking those questions as you navigate this digital mess.